Hello, welcome to Soulprint Intuitive Tarot. Lovely, lovely to have you here. So, the crazy continues, right? Crazy continues. Let's take a look at what the Dems are doing, frankly, and what they're not doing. You've got Democratic governors who seem to be doing a good job, or the best job they can, kind of keeping things under control in their states. But I'm kind of more interested right now in the political Democrats, the party of the Democrats, the Nancy Pelosi's, the Chuck Schumers. So let's take a look at the Democratic Party, because there are people who are getting tired of hearing the Democrats had the plan. I get it. There are people who really strongly feel that the Democrats are not doing everything they could do or should do to sort of rein in the insanity. And so I want to take a bit of a look at that and see if we can get some insight or some guidance on what is going on that side of the political spectrum. So, come on down, because that's my question. Okay, so, what are the Democrats doing? What are the Democrats doing? What are the Democrats doing? Guess let's start with basics here, shall we? Okay. So, let's move this back so I've got a little bit more space here. There we go. Okay, so for the most part, certainly in terms of the House of Representatives, Pelosi has done a really good job of keeping everybody kind of on the same page and walking the same path forward. And you know what? Honestly, come on. She doesn't get huge rave reviews for that because common sense, logic would suggest that the path they're on is really the only path. Okay? You've got a pandemic going on here. You don't do things or behave like some of the Republicans are doing, not all, but some, in terms of just blatantly disregarding the science, disregarding the facts, and parking your common sense somewhere in the back 40 and forgetting to use it. So, they are behaving, generally speaking, broadly speaking, the way people frankly expect their government officials to behave. And so that's kind of where they're sitting. That's kind of where they're at right now. They are looking, it feels like there's a lot of balls kind of that they're juggling right now. There's definitely focus on the next election. There's definitely focus on trying to figure out how to get the next election to unfold in a way that is legal, in a way that is accurate. It's about getting the message out there and how they're going to get their messages out there. And that doesn't only apply to Biden and that election, it also applies to, of course, their own individual elections. Because for some people, mostly for a lot of people, frankly, you are now witnessing what happens. These are the consequences of what happens when you either don't vote or you, you know, I don't know, vote for Trump, or you decide that you don't really want to pay attention to the issues, so you just vote for the party you've always voted for. You are now living the consequences of that, as is the Democratic Party. They only have, first of all, understand and remember accurately that when Trump took office, the Republicans held the House, the Senate, and the White House. They were in a position, frankly, of total power, which honestly they squandered. And we should all say a prayer of gratitude for the fact that significant amount of their time was squandered, because you could be sitting in much worse positions, frankly, than you are right now if they had managed to shove through some of the stuff that they were really intent on shoving through. But early on, they figured with a bit of a shock that harnessing and reining in Trump was not really going to be a very easy thing to do. So they were hamstrung, right? There were things that they couldn't get done that they wanted to get done because he refused to sign bills, or he refused to listen because he didn't like, the television reporting or whatever his story was. But you have to remember that the Democrats were absolutely in a position where they had no power. They had very, very limited ways of getting anything done. So along comes 2018, and there's a landslide, and guess what? Thank God, the Democrats end up controlling the House. Okay, so that allowed for a certain amount of leverage. They, however, do not control the Senate. Mitch McConnell is still very much leader of the Senate, and he is still very, very much running the Senate. So even there, they are, hamstrung. There's only so much they can do because they don't have the power. And of course, we're not even going to talk about the White House, right? Because anybody who doesn't completely agree with Trump needs to be the enemy and must be treated accordingly. So you're now in a place as a country where you have a complete division of politics. Everything is so partisan that it's very, very difficult to move forward. And that includes things that, frankly, Democrats and Republicans are working on together. Now, one of the things that the Democrats have managed to do, is they have managed to influence to some degree, to varying degrees, what and how the money is being spent for this sort of emergency relief. But again, they have a committee out there that's trying to look into what is going on with the pandemic response. And Dr. Fauci has been told he's not allowed to testify at that committee hearing. So the White House still remains in control, and the Senate is not going to buck Trump in any obvious ways. And so they're not stepping in and saying you can't do that. And frankly, because he was not found guilty at his impeachment, despite the fact that he was impeached, he now believes, and rightly so, I'm sorry, but rightly so, that he can just say you can't talk to them and get away with it, okay? Because that's exactly what he did. Now, are there court cases going on to clarify that? Yeah. And are they going to ultimately rule in Trump's favor? No. But for right now, he has the ability to control everything. And what he can't control, the Republicans can. So, I mean, I know that maybe sounds like a bit of a commercial for the Democrats, but what I'm trying to point out here is the fact that they only have so much control. In some ways, it almost reminds you of the children of a bad marriage, right? You only have, as a child, you only have a sort of a limited ability to get your voice heard, or to in any significant way alter the behavior, or enact the changes. And so that's where they're at. So I get that people are frustrated. I hear it. I get it. And listen, again, I'm Canadian. I'm neither a Democrat nor a Republican. Hence, I hope I have objectivity here. But the reality is that they don't have a lot that they can push from beginning to end. And what you have is Mitch McConnell continuing to push his priority. And what has happened is, because the news has become so pandemic heavy, once the Senate is back, as they went back yesterday, what you have is a situation where there's going to be more and more stuff going on behind the scenes that isn't getting reported, and that attempts to solidify the Republican mandate. So they're going to try to shove more judges into the courts. They have the majority. So Democrats can yell and scream and stomp up and down, unless some Republicans actually also agree that the choices, either for the judges, or frankly the choices that Trump makes for his secretaries, or maybe it's not secretaries, maybe it's the people that he has to, it's the secretaries, the people he has to kind of get kind of their approval to put into place. Unless Republicans complain about it, it goes through. So while I understand that it's frustrating, and frankly, the Democrats honestly are doing their level best to try to move this forward, move this in a way so that things stop being so topsy-turvy, so that literally, the decisions of the country are being made from a completely emotional perspective. It is either from, this is what the Republicans want, or this is what Trump wants, and he's acting like a spoiled 3-year-old, no insult intended to 3-year-olds. So everything is about keeping him calm and or fulfilling their own personal agendas. So everything is being decided right now from an emotional perspective. And I think that that's really important to understand, is that you're not dealing anymore with an environment where the decisions are being made according to law, or according even to what is politically advantageous, certainly for the Republicans, unless it is advantageous to the evangelicals, right, or to whatever political group holds the power in terms of Republican re-elections. So they really are fighting an uphill battle. Where they do have control in the House, they're maintaining control. So they get these bills together and they push them through, and they get where? They get to McConnell's desk, where they grow to die. Okay? So that's the environment that these people are trying to work in. So you need to remember that. And the more frustrating things become, and the more, out of whack things seem to be, and in fact are, it's easier to lose sight of the fact that there's only so much that they can do, because they don't have the power, because aside from the 2018 election, they weren't given the power. They were stripped of power, or stripped of more power, maybe. Now, is it true that in some instances they're simply waiting for an election An election where they end up with significant enough power, and frankly, in order to fix this, they better get all of it. They better get the House and the Senate and the White House, and they better make sure that they don't antagonize people, so that in 2 years, when that next election comes due, that people aren't pissed off at them because they haven't been doing enough, and so then they get voted out and they lose their power, and they're not even able to push through everything that they're going to need to push through to correct the disasters. So is it true that in some cases they really don't have any option but to wait for their fortunes to change? I'm sorry, it is. They have plans, they have strategies, they have long, long lists of everything that was broken and damaged, and they have a to-do list that is ridiculously, insanely long, and in many cases complicated. Because when you build something up carefully, and something comes along and just destroys it, just shatters it, pushes it to the ground, knocks it over, and then stomps all over it, building it back up is not easy, because you're dealing now with broken pieces. And in some cases, you're able to see where the weak points were that created the ability for these things to come crashing down the way they did. So they have a great deal of work ahead of them. And frankly, at this point, a lot of what they're trying to do is minimize the amount of damage that is being done now within their power, with whatever's in their jurisdiction. And I mean, Nancy Pelosi's kind of been really clever dealing with Mnuchin, right? Because he's he's not he doesn't have any political savvy. He's just greedy. And because of that, and he also has a very one-track mind, right? It's all about profit. It's all about making money. It's all about the money. And so Pelosi at least has the advantage there, because she's frankly able to outmaneuver him. Because he has such a one-track mind, and she is operating from a bunch of different angles. So she continues to get even maybe more accomplished simply because she's not dealing with Trump, she's dealing with Mnuchin, and she is smart enough and clever enough to make Mnuchin think some of this stuff is his idea. And so he then turns around and sells it to Trump, who then signs the bill because he's convinced that it's going to make him look amazing. Just like the checks and the letters that are going out with his ridiculous signature scrawled all over them. He's doing that because he wants people to associate the money they're getting, or the relief they're getting, as being received from Trump. And that's a strategy, right? That's the sales technique that Trump is using, right? You're getting money, well, it's from me, so you need to reelect me because I'm the one that's doing this for you. I mean, and in some ways that is really a clear indicator of exactly how juvenile, frankly, Trump's marketing ideas are and his strategies are. They're very, very limited, and they're very in the moment. So, by the way, just mentioning this, I received, it was in my comment section the other day. There is a Democrat who, from what I understand, is a registered Democrat. She's a viewer. And she was saying that she has been getting flooded with Republican sort of donation drives, right? Republicans keep contacting her and wanting her to contribute to their cause and to their candidates. So that's really interesting, right? I mean, what is the strategy there? Is it just simply flooding maybe people who are a little bit on the fence, or trying to catch the people who voted for, the Democrats who voted for Trump last time? I don't know, but that's going on. So be mindful of that. Be mindful of the fact that there's like another kind of bombardment of stuff that is being pushed out there. The other thing that I want you to realize is that Trump is not in this alone. He has some help. He has some help from Russia. He has some help from China. And they are also, the Democrats are also pushing back against that. And they're now in a position where they have to push back against all of the misinformation, flat out lies that are being spread all over the internet, whether that's, Facebook or any other medium, so YouTube, right? Any other medium. There is a lot of information out there that is not coming from where it appears to be coming from. Just because something has the name American in it does not mean it was grown in America, right? And so again, I caution you, be really, really careful about that. So the Democrats, not only are they needing to push back against literally what Trump is doing and what the Republicans are doing, they're also needing to push back against that kind of inundation, if you will, of misinformation, bad information, that kind of stuff. Literally, I am not going to make a statement one way or the other about the allegations against Biden, except to ask, where were they in 2008 when he was given the role of vice president? And why was it? And women, you will understand this, again, maybe a little bit more than men, but there are many enlightened men out there who I am proud to claim as some of my viewers. But if I'm your best friend, or if I'm a close acquaintance of yours, and I tell you a story about some really inappropriate behavior being inflicted upon me when I was by a man in power, by a person in power, I don't think a few years later, when asked about it, you're going to say, oh, yeah, I completely forgot about that until she reminded me. Again, I am not saying that she should be branded a liar. I'm not. I'm absolutely not. But I'm also saying that he doesn't need to be branded a liar either when he denies it. This is a situation where things need to be investigated and looked into. But it's very curious. The timing is just very, very curious. And again, those other countries, while they have squeezed out a whole lot out of Trump than they ever thought they could have, beyond their dreams, they're not done. There's always a wish list. And when it was discovered how easy it was to manipulate this guy, well, the wish list grew. So, is it to their advantage to continue to keep him in office? You bet it is. So be mindful of that. Be careful of that. And, again, if things don't seem right, if things seem really far right, don't fall into it. Don't just believe whatever comes across your feed, as opposed to doing a little bit of research on exactly where this stuff is coming from. So they're fighting against that too, right? I mean, they're just in a position literally where everywhere they turn, they're getting kind of more stuff dumped on their plate that is ambiguous, and it's harder to fight back against. So again, this is not a justification of what is or isn't being done. It's a moment to, with clarity, understand kind of what they're up against and how desperate they are for people's support to get them in a position where they actually do have the power and do have the authority to start correcting some of this stuff. All right. Now, I want to drill down a little bit and see if I can kind of get a little bit more insight, if you will, on kind of specifically Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. Kind of get some clarity on what is going on behind the scenes there. All right, here we go. Let's take a look quickly at, we're going to do them both at the same time, just in terms of, economy of time. So, current Nancy Chuck, current Nancy Chuck, current Nancy Chuck. They got a lot of work ahead of them. They're doing a lot of work. Okay. So, part of what is going on kind of behind the scenes, right, is a lot of, like, you can literally look at these pentacles and see them as separate committees or separate areas where things are being monitored, whether it is sort of an official committee or whether it is a little bit quieter and behind the scenes, okay? But there seems to be a fair bit of stuff that's going on behind the scenes that we're not privy to, and frankly that we're not seeing. And but it very definitely feels as if there's some pretty heavy lifting being done behind the scenes by Democrats, not only having to do with the election, although that is really, really vital, because there are a lot of attempts right now to leave people literally out in the cold, right? To get them off of the voter rolls, to make it impossible for people to vote by, doing some of the things that have been done in other states already, right? Whether it was closing down polling stations in Georgia, or whether it was, and I'm sorry, I don't remember what state they sort of specifically did it in, although I don't think it was limited to one state, where they said that your Native Americans who were living on reservations needed to have street mailing addresses. And, oh, you don't have those? Well, too bad you can't vote. That kind of stuff. That is still part of the strategy of the Republicans. Do not kid yourself. And so they're working diligently, more on a state level, but federally, make no mistake, about trying to ensure that people are not left out in the cold. They're working to expose some of the stuff that's going on, particularly see this as work that is going on quietly in the Senate. I'm sorry, in the House under Pelosi. They are working very hard at shining a light on stuff that is currently hidden or not being brought to the fore. And again, it's not going to be Nancy Pelosi who's sounding the bell. It's going to be their surrogates. So you're hearing stuff from other Republican or other Democrats. Don't think that they're acting sort of individually. There is a cohesive grouping that's going on behind the scenes that we don't see. And you know what? I get it. It's really frustrating when you don't get to see the whole picture. But understand, they really do have their eye on the prize. They really understand with clarity, I think maybe that they never understood before, how vital it is to not only be able to get back into power so they can start fixing this stuff, but to understand really where the weaknesses are within the system that frankly allowed things to spin so out of control. There was such a reliance on tradition and guardrails that nobody was expecting somebody to take a hammer to it and destroy it. There's a difference between hitting a guardrail and bumping it up or smashing it up a little bit What Trump has done is literally sailed right over the guardrail and carried on down his path. So there's just so much going on. And you know what? This is the thing. We're not going to see it. We're not actually going to have clarity on everything that is hidden, everything that is clouded, until they get into office and things start being released. Until then, they are carrying a great deal of weight on their shoulders because they understand what needs to be done. They get it, but they don't have the power to do all of it. This card is really, really telling. You have the rule of law here, okay? This is the Democrats. They are so busy having to look over their shoulders to prevent the next attack. And the attacks aren't personal, okay? The attacks are to the Constitution, to the rule of law. The attacks are to everything that used to be normal. They understand that they have to get into a position of actual power before they are going to be able to correct some of this stuff. Now, okay, this is the final message. There are going to be many who walk away in disappointment. There's going to be a new power that comes in who is able to start correcting things not only domestically, but across the waters, internationally, with allies who have been treated like enemies. There is going to be a strong and powerful force of the Democrats in office after the next election if everybody does their job and takes their responsibilities seriously. And that's going to rebuild and make the White House strong and actually prosper again, flourish again. So, and here comes justice. Okay, here comes justice. So, there you have it. That's a look at what is going on in the Democrats, with the Democrats behind the scenes. Some of it is sort of up front and in your face, but energetically, in terms of what I am receiving, it very, very much looks like they're ultimately going to end up with maximum power, which is what they're going to need to fix stuff if everybody does their job. And for now, they recognize and hear the frustration of people who say they aren't doing enough, but there's only so much, frankly, that they have the power to do. And there are a lot of people out there who kind of want the Democrats to behave like Republicans and, kind of hit below the belt and really, really attack. And I understand that. There's a lot of, what is that, an eye for an eye as opposed to turning the other cheek. But if you start to look at Democrats and independents and Republicans who have just simply rejected everything that has gone on, start to consider them sort of the enlightened ones who maybe are not so interested in behaving in a way that, frankly, broadly, is viewed as ignorant and animal-like behavior. So I don't know that you're going to see these attacks the way the Republicans attack. Frankly, from a spiritual point of view, it would be really nice if that behavior stopped globally. And certainly, if it stopped in the United States, where things have become so partisan that you can't even make the most innocent statement without offending Trump, right? You can't say anything because anything you say he views as an attack against him. Ask Bush, ask Obama. He's so busy attacking them because he thinks that he's being attacked by them. They're not even saying his name. Until next time, take care and be well. Bye-bye.